There's a version of you that never existed. Not because you weren't capable of it, but because one morning, maybe it was cold, maybe you were tired, maybe something in your life made it feel pointless, you looked at the work ahead of you and decided it wasn't worth it. You walked away. And you told yourself you'd come back. You didn't. And the most devastating part of that story is not the body you didn't build. It's not the competition you never entered. It's not the weight you never lifted. It's this. You never found out what you were.
Too much is not enough. Nobody said this stuff makes it.
Every single person who has ever trained seriously, every person who has ever stood under a loaded bar and decided to go to war with themselves, has stood at the edge of quitting. Not once, hundreds of times. The quit doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come dressed in defeat. It comes in the language of reason. It comes dressed as wisdom. Your body needs rest. You've been consistent enough. You've already proven something to yourself. And here's what nobody will tell you about that voice. It isn't wrong. Rest is real. Consistency is real. The body has limits. But the voice is not talking about your body. It's talking about your identity. What the voice is actually saying, underneath the reasonable language, beneath the self-care vocabulary, is this: you don't have to keep becoming. And that is where the quit lives. Not in exhaustion. Not in overtraining. Not in injury. The quit lives in the comfort of who you already are. The men and women who refuse to quit, and I am not talking about the ones who are simply born with superior genetics. I'm not talking about the ones who had the easiest path. I'm talking about the ones who train through grief, through failure, through seasons where nobody was watching and nothing was working. Those people discovered something that cannot be taught. They discovered that the body is not the destination. The body is the evidence. The evidence of what happened when you chose the room with the weights instead of the room with the couch. The evidence of 5 a.m. when the world was still dark. The evidence of the third set when every cell in your body was screaming for you to stop, and you looked at that bar and said, "Not today." You look at a man with that kind of physique and you think you're seeing muscle. You're not. You're seeing decisions. Hundreds of thousands of them, stacked on top of each other, compressed into tissue and proportion and symmetry. You're seeing a person who found out what they were. Let me tell you something about the men who built the greatest physiques in history. They were not fueled by excitement. Excitement is cheap. Excitement fills gyms in January and empties them by March. Excitement is what gets you to buy the program, download the app, start the meal prep. Excitement has a shelf life of approximately 11 days. What those men ran on was something quieter, something darker, something the motivational posters won't put on your wall. They ran on dissatisfaction, not insecurity, not self-hatred, not the kind of wound that needs to be healed before you can start. A different kind of dissatisfaction, the refusal to accept the distance between where you are and what you're capable of. Ronnie Coleman trained through back surgeries that would have ended most careers, not because he loved pain, because the distance between who he was and who he knew he could be was too great to ignore. It was an open wound. And the only thing that closed it even temporarily was the bar. Mike Menser sat in a library as a young man and read philosophy. He didn't just train his body, he built a system, a theology of effort. He went to war with the conventional wisdom of his era because he understood something fundamental, that the greatest results do not come from the most volume. They come from the most intensity. From the moment where you have given everything and then you give more. Tom Platz went to the squat rack the way other men go to war. You have seen his legs. You know the result. What you have not seen is the years of sets that ended in him, unable to walk to his car. The sets that continued past the point where most people would have called an ambulance. The sets that were not filmed, not documented, not celebrated by anyone except the iron itself. The iron doesn't care about your motivation. It only counts what you do. Here is the thing nobody wants to say out loud, but everyone who has truly pursued this life knows to be true. You will lose things. Not metaphorically, not in some inspirational poster way where the loss is redeemed by the gain. You will lose time with people who needed you. You will lose relationships that couldn't survive your dedication. You will lose the easy version of your life, the version where Saturday mornings are for sleeping in and every social invitation gets a yes. You will become, in the eyes of certain people, excessive, obsessive, difficult, and you will have to make a choice that most people never understand, let alone respect. You will have to decide that the version of yourself you are building is worth what it costs, not because it will make you happy every day, not because it will be appreciated by everyone you know, but because you looked at what you were capable of, really looked, and you could not walk away from it. That is not obsession. That is integrity. There are people who will never understand why you do this. They will look at the sacrifices and call them excessive. They will look at the discipline and call it unhealthy. They will look at the body you are building, the evidence of your choices, the physical record of every decision you made when nobody was watching, and they will reduce it to vanity. Let them. Because here's what they cannot see. Every rep you completed when you were depleted was a conversation you had with yourself about who you actually are. Every morning you walked into that gym while the rest of the world slept was a vote you cast for the version of yourself that refuses to be ordinary. Every meal you prepared, every set you finished, every single moment where you chose the hard thing over the easy thing, you were not just building a body, you are building a self. And here's what I want you to understand. What I need you to carry out of this with you. Most people will never find out what they were. Not because they weren't capable. Not because the genetics weren't there. Not because the circumstances were too hard. But because they quit before they got to the part of the story where they found out. They quit in the middle. You are still here, which means the story isn't finished, which means there is still time, there is still iron, there is still a version of you that has not yet been discovered. Go find out what you are. The bar is waiting.